Thanks for joining us from the Ohio AgNet Voice You Know with the News You Trust studio, sponsored by BASF, where you can count on the trusted performance of Allevo seed treatment to protect your soybean crop. Today's program also brought to you in part by your soybean checkoff, working for you. These comments are from DTN tax columnist Rod Mazewski. He says, what a difference a month makes. There haven't been major changes in tax law for the longest time. Then July hit. Now the problem is trying to figure out what to write about because there are so many topics out there since the One Big Beautiful Bill Act is all over the news. He says, I'm going to dissect some of the tax provisions that relate to farming. One of the most impactful changes to farmers is the return of bonus depreciation and the increase to Section 179 expense. Although bonus depreciation is back, it's a bit tricky to qualify. The asset must be acquired and placed into service after January 19th, 2025. So if you signed a contract to buy a tractor on January 10th, 2025, and is delivered April 25th, it would not qualify for the 100% bonus depreciation. For those in the processing side of agriculture, bonus depreciation may be used for qualified production property that would otherwise be a 39-year asset if certain requirements are met. In the One Big Beautiful Bill, the term production is limited to agricultural production and chemical production. In addition to extending bonus depreciation, Section 179 was increased from $1.25 million to $2.5 million, and the phase-out is increased from $3.1 million to $4 million. This is particularly important if your state has bonus depreciation add-backs. Starting in 2022, the business interest deduction limit prevented the add-back of depreciation, amortization, and depletion. As a result, many highly leveraged farming operations could not deduct all the interest paid. Under the One Beautiful Bill Act, starting in 2025, depreciation, amortization, and depletion are added back to adjusted taxable income, increasing the amount of interest that a farm can deduct. Today's weather brought to you by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Here's the forecast.
Plenty of rain activity still set to move across the Buckeye State. I'm Chief Meteorologist Ryan Martin. Let's take a look at that Ohio Ag Weather Update. Rain pushing into western parts of Ohio here as we move through mid-morning. This is part of a huge cluster of shower and thunderstorm action that exited the Central Plains late yesterday and overnight last night. It's going to be coming through our area, just trucking through, and has the potential for some heavy rain and strong to severe weather. 1/2 to 2 inch rainfall totals in the next 24 hours is what I'm penciling in here. Once we get into early tomorrow morning, I feel the bulk of the action is going to be done already, lifting farther north and east. Maybe we have a lingering tail of scattered showers through midday tomorrow, but by the time we get into tomorrow afternoon, we're starting to clear out. Friday turns out partly sunny and pleasant, and we are dry then almost all the way through it next week. I'm watching next Friday into Saturday for a little bit of hit-and-miss action to our west over Indiana, right now keeping it out of Ohio. And if that continues to be the case, we are dry through the weekend next weekend and into the week of the 6th. An impressive streak of dry weather, which will allow us to use the moisture that's falling here currently and then get right back to the fields and harvest some grain that maybe has some slightly higher moisture content. That's the way things are stacking up. I'm Chief Meteorologist Ryan Martin.
And thanks, Ryan. Secretary for Trade and Foreign Agricultural Affairs, Luke Lindberg, announced an aggressive 3-point plan that will support American agricultural producers and exporters. First, America First Trade Promotion Program. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act authorized an additional $285 million per year for trade promotion programs beginning in fiscal year 2027. USDA will kickstart the program 1 year earlier with $285 million in fiscal year 26 and launch the American First Trade Promotion Program. Also, USDA will launch a new model of trade missions as a supplement to the current model, targeting reciprocal trade deal countries and new market access opportunities. The focus of these will be determined country by country to maximize high return, low risk agriculture export prospects and connect buyers and sellers. And The GSM 102 Credit Guarantee Program is authorized to offset $5.5 billion in market risk for purchasers of American commodities. Currently, the program has only $2 billion in liabilities on its books. USDA will reinvigorate this program to ensure it is best aligned to facilitate American exports to new markets. Let's check in with Dusty Sonnenberg. He has a conversation about more uses for soybeans.
Joining me today is Steve Reinhardt. Steve, past chair of the United Soybean Board. Steve, a lot of work being done by USB with farmers' checkoff dollars to try and drive domestic demand for soybeans. A lot of times we think about livestock, the number one consumer of soy and soy products, but there's a lot of non-feed type uses also that soy has been found to be very useful in new development. Let's talk a little bit about some of those.
Sure. So our goal at the United Soybean Board is to return that value back to the farmer for their investment in the checkoff. And for every dollar that we invest in some of this research, we're able to gain back $12.30. And one of the things that we've discovered through our research working with Green Plains Solutions is we can take soybean meal and create a firefighting foam. And this firefighting foam is 100% biodegradable. So it has none of the PFAS or the forever chemicals in traditional firefighting foam, which has been so detrimental to firemen's health and then environmental cleanup. And so I call it a win-win. We get to help our first responders. It's better for the environment, and then we get to sell soybeans in the process.
A lot of great things being done with your checkoff dollars, driving domestic demand and adding value to U.S. soy. Again, my guest today, Steve Reinhardt, past chair of the United Soybean Board.
And thanks, Dusty. Oil prices rebounded Tuesday morning following 4 consecutive trading days of declines as traders awaited details about revamped sanctions against Russia and a potential return of some 230,000 barrels per day of Iraqi oil to the market. Now, oil futures have been trading in a narrow channel for the past 2 months, and we're on track for a small decline in the third quarter as oversupply concerns intensified and pushed geopolitical risks to the sideline. Global production growth has been significantly outpacing demand growth and output increases by OPEC and non-OPEC members alike, and are set to lead to a swelling global inventory by the end of the year. While the United States has been pressuring European allies to step up sanctions against Russia, the economic bloc has little interest in reigniting inflationary pressures by all too severely stymieing Russia oil flows. The EU's newest sanctions package, expecting in the coming days, will add more than 100 tankers to its sanctioned vessels list as a part of a Russia so-called shadow fleet. Details have yet to emerge, but early reports suggested the economic bloc will refrain from implementing broad secondary sanctions against buyers of Russian oil, instead targeting specific entities across India and China. Stay tuned, back with market details after this.
Biodiesel isn't just a fuel, it's a game changer for your engine, your wallet, and your farm. Cleaner burning and efficient, biodiesel enhances engine life, power, and fuel economy. Plus, it delivers real value, adding $1.33 to every bushel of soybeans grown. That's 13% more value per bushel, directly tied to the biofuels market. Ready to turn soybeans into power and drive with purpose? Learn how at soyohio.org.
Attention construction pros. Purple Wave Auction brings quality equipment to your fingertips. Join our bi-weekly online auctions featuring dozers, excavators, loaders, and more. We provide detailed listings, photos, and seller contact info. Inspect online or in person. With our no reserve policy, every item sells to the highest bidder. Visit purplewave.com today and see why informed builders choose Purple Wave. Transparent processes, real deals. Your next great purchase awaits. purplewave.com.
Powered by Soy Biodiesel, heading to Ada today for week number 1 of Feeding Farmers in the Field. And you can join us on Thursday as the Ohio AgNet and Heritage Cooperative will get together for the FFA Day at the H-Plot in Mechanicsburg. Follow Heritage Cooperative on social media for complete details. Today's market analysis is brought to you by the Louis Dreyfus Company. Excited to be building the newest state-of-the-art soybean crush facility in Upper Sandusky, Ohio. For marketing information of your beans to LDC, call 574-566-2113. Here's Ryan Martin.
Grain markets finished mostly higher on a Tuesday, but I hesitate to call this turnaround Tuesday very much. Why? Well, we've beat the markets up pretty good over the past several sessions, and yesterday's jump of 3 to 4 cents in corn wasn't really all that inspiring. Flat to penny higher moves in beans, definitely not inspiring. Bean meal was down, bean oil up a little bit, and then the wheat markets got together and decided to do a little bit here, 8 to 9 higher, both in Chicago and in Kansas City markets. However, I look at this too. There was not a lot of change in headline action yesterday. As a matter of fact, new headlines were non-existent. Short covering and end user demand did spark a little bit of the recovery yesterday. The rally lasted into the noon hour. Producer selling was noted from the Argentine farmer, not the U.S. farmer. Argentina's farmers are selling stored grain due to yesterday's tax holiday and their desire to reward improved returns. November soybeans are traded back up to about 10.15. December corn tested the 4.25 mark. Wheat market had the biggest recovery with the December futures trading above 5.20, closing there in Chicago. We got close to 5.11 in December Kansas City wheat. Both of those were a nice run to the upside. President Trump spoke yesterday morning at the UN expressing a surprisingly negative batch of comments and views on green energy and, of course, the Biden administration. The negative comments made listeners feel like biofuels are a part of the big green lie rather than a homegrown U.S. energy solution. So we have to watch and see whether anything reverberates there. The teleprompter was broken well into his speech on the failure of globalism, but it seemed like Trump's heartfelt support of green fuels was lacking. That is going to be important to the U.S. farmer as we need new domestic demand drivers that are primarily tied to green fuels to build future demand, especially in the biodiesel and ethanol spaces. So, again, not much of an earth-shattering batch of headlines yesterday, but what was there didn't spark the warm fuzzies, at least in this commentator. I'm Ryan Martin.
And thanks, Ryan. We'll look at the overnight grain figures after this.
You're not wired to have a response to this sound. You're neutral to it, and you can hear it repeatedly without feeling anything. But when we introduce a new stimulus, save the food, we've achieved pulling a natural or inborn response from you. Save the food, because 40% of all food in the US never gets eaten. Save the food. Cook it, store it, share it. Just don't waste it. For tips and recipes, visit SaveTheFood.com. Brought to you by NRDC and the Ad Council.
If your summer road trip leads you to Ohio's farm country, be sure to share the road with Ohio's farmers. Farm machinery moves slowly, makes wide turns, and needs extra space to avoid obstacles like mailboxes and guardrails. Let's all be mindful and make sure everyone gets home safe and sound this year. This message brought to you by the Ohio AgNet, OSU Extension Ag Safety and Health Team, and this station.
Today's market's brought to you by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Overnight at the open, December corn down 1/4 cent at 4.26. March down 1/4 cent, 4.42 3/4. May, though, is up 1/4 cent at 4.52.5. November soybeans down 3 3/4 at $10, 8 1/4. January down 3 3/4 at $10.28. December wheat up 1 3/4 at 5.22 1/4 cent. March up 1 1/4 at 5.40 1/4 cent. Next September, 5.76 up 1 1/4. In livestock, October cattle down $1.55, closing at $235.60 yesterday. December 147 lower at $238.75, and February down $1.22 at $241.12. That's it for the minuses in livestock. October lean hogs up $1.72, closing $100.52. December up $1.97 at $90.72. The October feeder cattle closed up 77 at 362.12. November up 85 cents at 360.75. And January up $1.95 at $355.12. That's the first day in a long time that feeder cattle and cattle have moved in opposite directions. Thanks for joining us. This is the Ohio AgNet.